Welcome to the Daily Word Verse by Verse. Grab your Bibles and follow along as we study the book of Revelation. Keep in mind, I am using your Holman Christian Standard Bible, so if you're using a different translation, the read is different, but the message is the same. We're going to pick it up in chapter 12. Now, keep in mind, chapter 6 began the 7-year tribulation period. It also began Daniel's third section. Remember, the book of Revelation is divided into 3 sections. The thing that he saw, which was the risen Christ, which we see throughout these prophecies. We also saw the things that were, which was the 7th message to the church. Again, Jesus himself administering and speaking to his churches. And now the things that will be hereafter. Now the things that are hereafter center around the 7-year period, the 7-year, what is also called the day of the Lord. It is also the day that during this time Jesus is executing judgment against the wickedness of man. Now, I want to refresh our memories on this, because although prophecy is not complicated, it is exhaustive. And as John is writing these things, he sort of assumes we know the prophecies of Ezekiel, Daniel, Isaiah, Zechariah. And we do have them. They certainly are available. But I'm going to go back to Daniel just for a moment, just to reference, so that we can, again, refresh our minds on what is going on here, especially as we go into the 12th chapter. Now, remember, Nebuchadnezzar was given a dream by God, and that dream was the 4 major world dominating kingdoms from Nebuchadnezzar's day until the time Jesus would come. The images of this human image, 4 different types of government in 4 different times. And then what we saw was a rock that was cut out without hands from a great mountain, and it destroyed this human image, meaning the human government or man's time upon the earth. That's important to understand. Now, in the midst of when we come back to Daniel's prophecies, Daniel gave a prophetic timeline, and I want to just refresh our memories. In verse 24, this is Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, it says, 70 weeks are decreed about your people and your holy city, to bring the rebellion to an end, to put a stop to sin, to wipe away injustice, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and the prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Now, remember, this prophetic timeline began, in other words, the clock started, click, 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 when Cyrus issued the decree to rebuild Israel. After 70 years of exile, Jeremiah prophesied that the people would return to the land. So that prophetic time clock began when Cyrus issued that decree. And it ran until the 69th week, which brought us to the crucifixion of Jesus. And then the prophetic time, or the prophetic clock, stopped. When the prophetic clock stopped, there was a age inserted between week 69 and week 70. Now, week 70 is this 7-year tribulation period. This 7-year period of time when God is executing judgment. Now, that's the 70th week. So this in-between time, and currently this clock is stopped, because the age of the church, the Gentile time, but also the mystery of the church is going on. Now, here's the problem. We don't know how long the church age is going to last. And that's why people get mixed up when they try to apply prophecy, current events, especially out of the news, the book of Revelation without taking into account the prophetic clock is stopped. Now, here's what we know, that when you know for sure, when these 7 seals judgments begins, the prophetic clock has begun. We also know 7 years later, Jesus is going to come back. That is during that period of time will be the only time that you will be able to accurately predict the second coming of Jesus Christ. Now, everybody else who has tried to use numerology, they've tried to use dates, all kinds of inaccurate information to try to predict Jesus coming, and they've all failed to date. One of the reasons why, and I believe the major reason why, is because you're not taking into account the church age, the mystery of the church age, which we don't have a timeline on that. We don't know how long this period of time is going to last. Okay, so the 70th week we know, and let's see, verse 27, I'm still in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, he will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and offering, and the abomination and desolation will be on the wing of the temple until the decreed destruction is poured out on the desolator. So we know that the 70th week of Daniel hasn't happened. The 7-year tribulation period, because the man of sin hasn't arisen. And we know that when he arrives, he's going to make a covenant for 7 years, a week, and then he's going to break that covenant. Now that's the abomination. And the abomination will be he's going to go into the temple. And he's going to be demand to be worshipped as God. And then he's going to begin a Holocaust. That's the destruction. The abomination that makes desolate. Okay? We're not there yet, and we know that hasn't happened. Now, another thing we have to consider, in the book of Ezekiel, Daniel's prophecy and Ezekiel take place at the same time. Different parts of the Babylonian Empire. In fact, of course, Daniel was a high official, but both were exiled. And Ezekiel's prophecy centered around the events of the 7-year tribulation period as they focus on the people of Israel, the temple. Okay? And that's important because, again, when we studied the 11th chapter, remember he said to mark this temple, to measure the temple. And so during this tribulation period, there appears to be a third temple of Solomon, in which, again, the man of sin will go in and desecrate it, with just the abomination that makes desolate. Now, I wanted to, again, give us a kind of a reminder of these prophetic events. I didn't mean to go that way. I was going to get right into chapter 12, but in the next video, we'll start chapter 12. Then this will give us an understanding of some of the things and why they're being said or why they're being prophesied the way they are. All right, so I'll pick it up in the next video, so I'll see you then.